Good evening from our very temporary accommodations in New York. The memo having instructed those who are against health care reform to, quote, rock the boat early in the presentation, to yell out and challenge the statements, to rattle him, get him off his prepared script and agenda, stand up and shout and sit right back down. Our fifth story on the countdown, Republican Congressman Joe Wilson of South Carolina apparently taking that advice, mixing in his long-standing anger management issues, and mistaking a presidential joint address to Congress for a town hall meeting. Later in this news hour, my special comment on Congressman Wilson's behavior and the true problems therein. We begin with the latest details. Mr. Wilson today apologizing, it would seem only reluctantly and only under duress, for having shouted at the President of the United States, "You lie."
Well, I last night heard from the leadership that they wanted me to contact the White House and state that my statements were inappropriate. I did.
He has not yet resigned, having apologized only because somebody else wanted him to do so. No big leap, then, that Congressman Wilson still believes that President Obama is lying.
In particular on the issue, which I think is very important, of whether the bills cover would include illegal aliens or not. Indeed, the bills that are before Congress would include illegal aliens. And I think this is wrong. We need to be discussing issues specifically to help the American people, and that would not include illegal aliens. These are people. I'm for immigration, legal immigration. I've been an immigration attorney, but people who have come to our country and violated laws, we should not be providing full health care services. Would include illegal aliens or not. Indeed, the bills that are before Congress would include illegal aliens. Would include illegal aliens. And these are people.
Now, just as last night, the fact's not even close to backing up the bluster, according to the folks at the Pulitzer Prize-winning PolitiFact.com. The White House reiterating today that undocumented immigrants would not be allowed to buy into the public exchange. A broader point, perhaps, and more relevant. The president was not discussing two amendments in one bill making its way through the House. He was outlining the entire plan as it will look once it reaches his desk. We rejoin Congressman Wilson with possibly the most irrelevant soundbite of a long day.
It was spontaneous. It was when he stated, as he did, about not covering illegal aliens, when I knew we'd had those two amendments. And I say that respectfully.
Frankly, sir, you don't know what that latter word means. Respect being something that a colonel in the reserves would have for his commander, let alone his commander-in-chief, Colonel Joe Wilson of the South Carolina National Guard Reserve, having those breached military protocol on top of everything else. Republican Congressman Wilson apparently at liberty to abandon respectful conduct. His leadership today backing him up by insinuating that the president did in fact lie in last night's speech.
Thirdly, he said illegal immigrants wouldn't get government benefits. H.R. 3200 does not contain any restrictions on non-citizens participating in and paying for coverage available through the exchange, whether the non-citizens are legally or illegally present or in the United States temporarily or permanently.
This is a health care reform debate. If you want to have an immigration reform debate, wait your turn and tell your side that what you are asking is that every person in this country who seeks medical attention in a hospital in the United States, including native-born Republicans, would have to present proof of birth every time. In other words, you want national identity cards to be checked and rechecked and faked. Senator Graham of South Carolina taking a page out of the Karl Rove playbook by today accusing the president of having behaved in an undignified manner last night, criticizing the tone of his speech, not the crazy tone of a member of his own state's congressional delegation, but the tone of the president. Boss Limbaugh, meanwhile, apparently upset that he was not consulted before the apology.
I'm going to tell you something. One of the things that's really irritated me all morning and last night was listening to Republicans, even after Wilson has apologized, and I wish he had not. But he's apologized, and even after he's apologized, members of his own party are all over television denigrating it. Yeah, it was bad decorum. Folks, can I tell you what's happening here? This speech last night and this administration is not your average presidential administration. This is not a garden party. This is not a lecture at Harvard or any other university. We are in the process. We are in the midst of an administration that is trying to totally tear down the institutions and traditions that have made this country great. He is lying, President Obama is, from the moment he opens his mouth until he ends the speech.
Elsewhere on your insane radio dial, Sean Hannity reassuring his guest, Congressman Wilson, that he was right and that Democrats have treated President Bush with just as much disrespect.
So the end of the day is you're right and the president was wrong. The left is going to mobilize against you. And I say this because they have called the president every name in the book. And they never apologized, by the way, Congressman. Do you think there's a double standard here?
Quite a double standard.
Yes, there is. Elected Democrats never shouted lies at President Bush during any of his speeches. If they'd done that, Bush would never have finished his first speech. Meantime, the denouement to all this, overnight, Mr. Wilson's very safe House seat in the high-rent tourist area of South Carolina shifted to in play. Congressman Wilson's challenger in next year's midterm election, Rob Miller, today raising more than $500,000 and counting. That was some shout. The president, meantime, always eager to find common ground, today accepting Congressman Wilson's apology.
I'm a big believer that we all make mistakes. He apologized quickly and without equivocation, and I'm appreciative of that.
Time now to call on our own Lawrence O'Donnell, contributor to the Huffington Post, former chief of staff to the Senate Finance Committee. Lawrence, good evening.
Great to be here, Keith.
With everything that Congressman Wilson said today, that Minority Leader Boehner said today, Limbaugh, Hannity, did the Republicans take what was already an untenable position for them and manage somehow to succeed in making it worse?
Well, they've become very good at that. And following campaign manager Limbaugh is to follow him off the cliff. He has advised the Republicans into a series of losses here, 2006 congressional campaign, the presidential campaign this time around, congressional campaign this time around. He is not the guy to listen to. You know, I didn't listen to Rush today, Keith, but here in Washington I did listen to some African-American talk radio. There's another phenomenon out there, which is in black America, they are noticing that the very first president in the television age to be heckled, the first president to suffer a heckling in that situation, is the first black president. That has not gone unnoticed. There is a very particular offense being taken in the African-American community tonight.
And, by the way, thus, the first congressman to heckle a president during a speech happens to be a member of the radicalized group, the Sons of Confederate Veterans. So there is, if there was any implication there, in fact, there are two implications there. But back to this, the meaning of this incident going forward. When the Dixie Chicks criticized President Bush on stage at a concert in London, the right tried to blacklist them.
And I don't think we'd hear from the congressman again. They'd get him shipped off to Guantanamo overnight. I mean, yeah, Keith, the reaction, I mean, Sean Hannity, it's just unimaginable to me what the reaction would be, because the truth of the matter is guys like Hannity do not believe in the First Amendment. Yeah, it would be just an hysterical reaction on their part, absolutely.
Last question about Congressman Wilson. Did we reach a low water mark in terms, or high water mark in terms of the stupid out here? Because I'm just wondering if there is such a place, and if that wasn't it. I'm advised that Bill O'Reilly just referred to that Lewin Group and the Lewin Group study that the conservatives are so fond of talking about in regards to health care. He referred to it as an independent research group owned by United Health, which might actually be stupider than what Wilson said last night.
I'm going to stick with Wilson for this news cycle, Keith. I spoke to a lawyer in South Carolina today who went to law school with Wilson. An idiot was the most generous word he could come up with in a string of words to describe his experience with Wilson. He maintained to me that no one in Wilson's district has any right to be surprised by this. You could see this coming a long way.
Tonight, Democrats called this speech a game changer. New polling says it was a game changer for millions of Americans. Republicans, however, still playing the previous game. House Republican Whip Eric Cantor, who corrals Republican votes in that chamber and sends texts during presidential addresses, "I am sitting on my butt," was asked whether he, like the president, could make concessions in his party's positions on health care. As you will see, his response entailed returning to the big concession he wants Democrats to make.
You know, Robin, I think it's very important that we dismiss this notion of a government option. I think if we listen to the American people right now,
Speech, 53% of those who watched supported Mr. Obama's plan to reform health care. After the speech, 67% of those who watched, two-thirds. That number fell from 36% to 29%, meaning the speech led 1 out of 5 opponents to drop their opposition